Today, we're going to really spend some time with the word define. I love this word, like define your limits, define who you're going to be, define how you're going to show up, define what you're going to do in time. Sometimes you're going to get done in 6 weeks what, unfortunately you thought, would take maybe 6 days. Welcome to Your Ultimate Self. Here we go, episode 4. And today we're going to be talking about defining and deciding who you need to be. In previous episodes, we uncovered why this podcast is going to be something worth checking out, right? What is your ultimate self? Why is it important at a time like this in the world the way it is? Are you going to be okay with where you are? Are you going to move forward? And if so, how are you going to move forward? Why are you going to move forward? And what ways are you going to move forward? We also talked about the layers. If you go back to episode 2, we talked about the layers. What are the different layers? What are all the different aspects that make up an ultimate selfer, and hopefully one that you are for life? And, after talking about the layers, we talked about transformation. Like, is transformation real? And essentially at the root of transformation is change. Is change real? Well, we know it is. We know that nature changes. We know that, ice cubes change when they're melted. We know that plants change when they're heading into the winter. And so, transformation is real. And unfortunately, not a lot of people have experience and results inside their life to allow them to believe that, hey, they can cut through the strife with a knife, that they can make changes happen on the fly. Transformation can happen in an instant. You just need to, be able to make that decision happen. It needs to first start in the thinking. And that's where we're going to go to today is, getting more clear, more sure, more certain. What is the ultimate self? Because there's no point in moving forward to talk about this exciting new version and new vision of who you're going to be unless we first get clear on who that is, why that is. And so today we're going to really spend some time with the word define. I love this word, like define your limits, define who you're going to be, define how you're going to show up, define what you're going to do in time. Sometimes you're going to get done in 6 weeks what, unfortunately you thought, would take maybe 6 days. Well, maybe on another instance, what you thought would take 6 months, well, that took you 6 weeks, So when we define, most people define things with time. But in fact, what we should always do, as we know with the great Napoleon Hill, we need to think first in order to grow rich and to be rich. And so the defining is actually going to come from our thinking. And so today, what we're going to begin to define is who we are, who we're going to be, who do we want to be, who must we need to be. Maybe change has approached you in your life and you have no other way out than to change, than to make it happen. Because maybe your wife, your husband, your kids, your boss, your clients, your customers, the market, your parents, they're demanding more of you. And well, this is a great opportunity to see what you're made of. And so when we begin to look at the definition of who we want to become, we need a target. If we don't have a target to aim at, there's going to be no point in pulling out the bow and arrow or, throwing that knife. If you don't have a target, what's the point? We don't have something to aim at. We don't have something to move forward towards. And so the biggest challenge I'm going to start with when we're talking about how to define who you're going to be is that we have been programmed. We've been lied to. Our thinking has been stolen. And as a result, we spend more time defining what we don't want. We're spending time defining what we don't deserve. Time defining, what's going to hurt or feel painful for us. We spend time defining the things that have led to pain and punishment instead of defining, hey, in this day, on this day, in this way, what is it that I want to define me to become? Who am I going to be? It is the ultimate self. And the ultimate self is going to be different from you to anyone else. But let's first define what it is that you want. Because if you don't define what it is that you want, well, I can guarantee you someone else will. Someone else will come in and they'll define who you should be. Maybe it's a well-meaning, well-intentioned parent always constantly needing you. Instead, you could be defining and saying, hey, I know that there's a lot of time and effort, caregiving needed to this parent or this person in my family. Maybe it's your brother or sister and they're struggling. But I mean, are you really doing them a favor if you're doing yourself a disservice? Think about that for a sec. If you feel like, why don't I hire some help? Why don't I get some help? Why don't I get someone this is their sweet spot, helping people like this? Well, why don't we define who that person needs to be? Because maybe it's not that you don't trust yourself and an ability to help them, but maybe you need to trust that you can make it happen, that you have the resources and reserves to take that situation to another level. And so have faith, have confidence in your ability to decide and move forward. But when we define, again, don't define it on terms of what you don't want. 9 times out of 10, I got on a call with a client, and guess what? They're telling me what they don't want. They're telling me that they don't want to happen. They're telling me the situations that they don't want to continue to happen this way. So if you are going to put yourself in this position to be courageous enough to define yourself on that high performance, that ultimate self level, define what you want first. Define what you want. And some people will have trouble working this muscle because it's never really been worked out. It's like you're going to the gym and you've never done legs, but you got those big old arms. And not working when it comes to designing the ultimate self. We want to be appropriate and go through all the layers, all the levels. We want to make sure we don't, just jump to the fun smoothies and yoga and stretching, but realize that we haven't spent enough time really truly thinking, getting clear, precise on who we're going to be, how we're going to show up, and more importantly, how am I going to level up what I bring to the world, the marketplace, my job, my clients, my business. And so define first what you want. And sometimes that's difficult to do. Again, we haven't been trained, but also we also don't have a model, a working model or formula or strategy to work through this. So here's what I'm going to give you as an opportunity. Get a pen and paper out, and I want you to write down 3 things: specific, non-specific, or a feeling. So if I were working with someone who I needed to start from the beginning to help them just define and decide and drive forward into their ultimate self, I would want them to help get like a benchmark, a target, something to aim for. And some people are going to be really specific. I want to lose a certain amount of weight, or I want to attract a certain type of mate. Or someone else may be a little more non-specific, like, I don't really know, but I don't enjoy my job. Okay, well, we got to reverse engineer that a bit, massage it. But the fact is, we could be also a little non-specific. You could say, hey, I just kind of really feel like maybe a little more joy, or a little more time freedom. So if ultimate self means I want to be more time free, focused, and ready, great. Maybe that's more non-specific. I mean, specificity is the heart of goal attainment and the drive needed to achieve major ambitions. If you're not specific, like I said, someone else will help you become specific, and it usually involves their goals and the things they want to achieve. Now, if you prefer, we can look at specific, non-specific, and a third one here, and that's related to feelings. So when you're defining who you're going to be, what I'm essentially giving you here is a variety of resistance or weights to choose from. Can you get specific? Can you help clarify what is the type of person you want to become? Is it the type of person that's going to attract a partner, or do you feel like you deserve the partner already? And if you did, why haven't they shown up yet? Right? So just getting you to use that side of you to think specifically, maybe non-specific, or a feeling. Like, I have a client who, when I first started with her, she wanted to be really happy. She wanted to be more happy. She wanted to be more outgoing. She wanted to have this feeling of joy. And so defining for her her ultimate self, it was like, I want to feel life. I want to feel this. So for some people, it's like, hey, I want to feel more positive. I want to be more optimistic, or I want to be more peaceful. And so when you're defining your ultimate self, define who you're going to be, not someone else. Okay. And that's where we really need to draw a line right now, is that we are so used to comparing ourselves to everyone else, whether it be on social media, on marketing, on billboards, television, movies, celebrities, athletes. We are in a comparison killer type of society, and it's doing nobody a favor. And when you define who you're going to be, remember, you're starting out right here, right where you are right now. So if you are going to define ultimate self, realize that there's going to be a step forward. Now, we're not going to get into all the things that need to take place in order for, that new, more clear version of you needs to come true and come through. But if you're specific in a way of describing who you're going to be, who is this ultimate self? If you're going to prefer, maybe it's more non-specific. Like, I want to have maybe more flexibility. I kind of wish I was, a little more easygoing, right? That could be kind of, non-specific. Or maybe it's like easygoing to yourself, because this is what we're talking about right now, is you define that. What's the feeling? What's the specific? What is that for you? And what we'll also find, though, as you'll see in just a moment, when we define our ultimate self, we're going to also define ourselves in terms with something else. In the first case, other people, and then going out for service and delivering value. And it doesn't matter if you're an employee or an entrepreneur. Your position as a parent, as a caregiver, as someone who's trying to be kind-hearted in this crazy world, it's to define how you're going to give. Right? One of the greatest triggers for the change of my life and the wealth that I've been able to accumulate and the freedom that I feel a sense of bubbling daily is that I spend less time asking, what am I going to get out of this? And I just start and I just do it. And I have found that I actually look forward to someone new coming in, seeing how I can help them. And then boom, all of a sudden they're a high paid client. But it didn't start out that way. It wasn't even my intention. It was just that I wanted to be of service, want to be delivering. So again, why are we talking about this? Because when you define the ultimate self, we need to define it for you, how you show up and interact and influence others, and then that next level of giving. And so think about right now, maybe a situation you have in your life where maybe you're not giving yourself enough time. Maybe you're struggling, your energy's down, your health is becoming a bit of a warning sign from your doctor, or someone saying something or saying they're worried about you. Then the question becomes, what do you want to get more specific about? What do you want to attract? What do you want to have more of? And instead of spending time saying, I want to have less pain or less inflammation, what would be the opposite of that? Oh, I would define specifically a feeling or something specific that I want to feel energized. I want to feel open. I want to feel free. I want to feel vibrancy, energy. I want to feel. So that's why I would say, like, a great phrase or a great theme when defining the ultimate self is to go for something specific, like a feeling, or something that maybe you're just like, characteristically, I want to be more patient with myself, right? So when we're talking about self, I also want you to remove all the captivity and the cages and the insane urges where you feel like you need to answer this based on, will you get approval from your husband, your wife, your kids, your dog, your parents, your siblings, your coworkers, your boss, yourself, and anyone else. This first area we really need to define is, who am I? Who do I want to be? With everything else just moved off to the side. drawing a line in the sand and saying, hey, I'll get to you next. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about how the ultimate self tends to show up in relationships and what you can do to level up. But the key here is defining who you're going to be. This is a conscious habit. This is a consistent habit. This is one that you got to do daily. Because imagine if, someone who's doing well and got a lot of things going for them, imagine they decided that one day they were just going to, you know what, I'm bored, or it's not important, or I don't want to change anything. You're going to find that people tend to go backwards in life. They legit go backwards in life. Like you all of a sudden making these changes, making this stuff happen, and then you take your foot off the gas and you forget what got you there. So when we're designing specifics and defining a reality of what you want for yourself, how you want to feel, what you want to have, what is that? What is that essence? What word describes the new you? Maybe you want to be, more bold. I will encourage you to remove the focus of feeling like you need to attach words that can be better used for the service that we'll look for in level 3. Okay. So the first level is like you and you only. So if you are in a room right now, it's about you deciding who you're going to be, irregardless of outside influence, irregardless of what people are saying and what they need in your life, irregardless of the things that you feel like you're compelled or drawn to do in business and in service, at home and in life with family, etc. And so maybe you're having a hard time figuring out who you do want to be, and that's okay. Maybe you're going to want to listen to this podcast episode once more or twice more, because every time you listen to it, you're going to be different. And maybe it's just like, when you read a book, you read it for the first time and you get what you're supposed to get. Read it again, you got more that time. And so we must focus on and continually assess and progress in the things that define who we are. And what most people do is they wait. Change comes only when something's broken, something's happened, something like completely fallen off. We need to be more proactive here. We need to start making changes for the sake of change itself, because the future favors the bold. And it is bold to define yourself rather than wait to be told. And hopefully this is coming to you at a time where you feel, empowered and you want to move forward. You want more. You just want to, jump on top of the mountain and scream down and let people know that, you're ready. You're ready. You're ready. And so here is the key distinction is you. Define you. Choose a word. Choose 3. Even write a sentence or a paragraph on who are you going to be? Who do you want to be? Who have you dreamt of being? Who would you love to be? If nothing was impossible and everything was possible and that dream came true, who would you be? Who would you wake up as tomorrow? And I know it'll take some time, and we'll focus on the skills, the habits, the behaviors, the focus, the attention, the things that we need to do to create a ripple in our vibration and those around us. But start by defining it, period. Because it doesn't matter, how it happens. What matters is why it happens. Why? Because it's my time, because I deserve it. And I'm sure if you're listening to this right now, you've probably grown. You've probably had some great changes. You found this podcast through your own quest and hunger for more. But then after we define who we're going to be, the next thing we want to take a look at is, a situation in our life. Let's say it's with our family. Say it's with our coworkers, or maybe you have some employees and you're running a business. And the situation right now is not easy. Here's where else we should define the ultimate self is, who am I going to be? How am I going to show up? Not who have you been, but who would you like to be when it comes to others? And the more you look at this process of engagement and you start noticing that, hey, when I show up at a higher level, people show up at a higher level. There's less resistance. There's less stress. There's less worry. If you begin to level up, I will tell you, other people around you will level up. It may not happen overnight because they may not even know what's happening at first, but over time, even those that are sticklers saying, you don't know my family, well, you don't know my family. And I'll tell you right now, there's such opportunities out there to do it because that's who you are. Just do it. Level up. So again, we're defining first level who we're going to be as a person, who we want to become, right? Could be specific, not specific, or a feeling. But then when we're looking at this second phase of defining your ultimate self, you also want to ask yourself, like, how do I show up when shit hits the fan? Maybe you're overreactive. Maybe your new view of yourself needs to be, I need to be more proactive. I need to be more patient with others. I need to be more peaceful with others. I need to have more bandwidth. I need to be more of a listener rather than just a speaker, right? You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. It will change your life. It did mine, and I see it all the time. So moving into the second realm here of defining who we are based on those around us, some would say, why are we spending time here? Why are we talking about others? Because the quality of your life is dependent really on your relationships. You got a shitty set of relationships, it's going to be really hard to sleep well at night, knowing that you got people to avoid, you got bombs to defuse, you got, you're pulling out the needles and the cactus, pricklies on your skin. Relationships have the ability to help you thrive and help you drive forward, where there's more belief, more faith, and more support. And on the other side, relationships also have a way of making you feel depressed and like not good enough and feeling like, I don't do anything right. So it's time to step up. I'm also not saying that you're all to blame, but guess what? I am. And it's time to take away the shame of just wanting to be a better person and setting up a new frame. This day and age, we need people to show up. And showing up is showing up at a level that's suitable for the other person, not just your own liking. Hear that one out for a sec. So what most people do is they wait to be told what they need instead of saying, hey, what does that person need? How are they feeling? What are they thinking? And if you spend as much time as I have, I can literally hear this over a phone call, let alone in person, let alone on a video. It's very obvious what someone's thinking, what they're not thinking, what they're feeling, what their emotions are, where they are personally, what's going on, just from a simple conversation. So when I ask you and I encourage you to ask yourself, who is that next level? What is that next level of you when it comes to engaging with others? Write down a statement. Write down a word that describes it. Write down a paragraph that maybe depicts the story of who you're going to be. Maybe you're going to be more bold, more compassionate, more of a guardian, more kind, more of a listener, more of an educator, more of a lover, right? Who is that? Because if you can look for your most challenging situations in your life, you'll also find the most generous opportunities. The areas that aren't working the best are usually the ones that have the opportunity to help you work your best, if you know what I'm saying. So number 1, define you. Number 2, define them. So that engagement with others. And then lastly, what we really want to touch on is, when you're defining your ultimate self, what is it that you do in the vicinity of service and value and contribution and work and output and creativity and offering to the world around you? What is that? I mean, maybe you've defined yourself as the job. Like, I am this because I do this. Okay, I would say that's probably an unfair way to label oneself. But sometimes, our purpose is really just tied to that. It's what we do. But what we should be doing is looking for, how am I feeling? How am I giving on a daily or continual basis? You may not get paid for it, but I can tell you right now, there are different ways to get paid. And only one is money, right? There's a lot of different ways to get back what you give, but you got to be willing to give first. So before we, kind of put this all in a nice, party packaged, nicely wrapped gift basket to send you on your way, as we define the ultimate self way, we need to define, what does that next level look like in service and value and offerings and programs or products, or what is that? What does that look like? What's the next level? Maybe service for you has been like, doing what you've been asked to do. But what happens if you were more bold? What happens if you did less of what others told you, and you lit the fuse, and you refused to be average, and you decided to go at things a lot more than you had in the past? I would say this is going to be a huge opportunity, to say the least. And so, in lieu of this decision that you have today, when we define, we're clear. That's essentially what define is. Define is to be clear. When we're unclear or uncertain, what happens is we actually become unable to define. We become like definitionless. We're kind of sit here and we get superstitious, we get stuck, we don't know what to think. But maybe, just without really getting this too convoluted, go for the thing that comes first. What's the feeling? What's the word? What's a descriptor? How would you label it if it was already revealed? If you could envision you 6-12 months from now walking onto a stage as a sort of next level sage, crowd and rage, like, oh, God, cheering you on, what would that be? Who would that be? Why would that be? How would it feel? So when we're looking at the ultimate self, and you're looking at you in showing up for others in level 2, and then in the third piece, what we're going to do in our skills and our service and our products, and moving forward towards the kind of actions that we can bring in a productive and effective way to the world, you're going to probably start to notice that others take notice. And so what's really important, though, is before we, jump into redefining who you're going to be in your business, make sure you haven't, jumped over you, right? Make sure you've spent enough time knocking on the door saying, hey, what do I need right now? What am I feeling right now? What do I need at this point in my life right now? Because you've probably had a tough year. You've had a tough month, tough year. You probably even, you've had a many tough years, perhaps. And I think what we first need to do is check in and just say, hey, how am I feeling right now? What's going on right now? Where am I optimistic? Where am I not? Right? Because the more we can define the things that in our life we really want to move forward on, we can start to say, okay, well, if I felt this, if I was this, I think that's the first step. And there's no right or wrong here. This is about defining what's best for you right now. And what you define now is going to be different than what you define later. Okay? So take this with a faint of heart and realize that any time you feel confused or overwhelmed or stuck, step away from the devices, step away from the text, step away from the social media notifications, text messages, and all sorts of urgent needs and matters that don't really matter when it comes to you defining you. Because you cannot pull yourself out of quicksand when you're hanging on to someone else. And maybe right now you're stuck. Grab that branch, pull yourself up, let's go. And then once you feel more strong and powerful and compelled, more clear, more effective, more confident, then we can reach back and say, hey, I want to help my brother, my sister, my husband, my wife, my kids, my parents, my friends, my coworkers, my employees, right? Level yourself up, because if you try to level someone else up first, you're not actually giving them the best of who you are and the best of what you got. So as you define you, don't forget, as you work on that, as you step in, set reminders and actions and anchors, that the next step is to define who you're going to be and how you're going to show up, how you're going to engage with others meaningfully, right? In a focused way, compassionately, kind of way. All right. And then lastly, keep the focus on how am I going to apply this in the work that I do? Because around the corner, there's going to be some opportunities. And the opportunity today is to define you, define your ultimate self. And I hope you're able to get one major light bulb that turns on that side of you that I'm giving permission to come through. I'm proud of you. Stay dedicated, stay focused. You got this. And I'm excited to support you on your journey. Andrew Skopik, the ultimate self, your ultimate self, over and out. We'll see you in the next episode.